Can you guys hear me okay?
Clear.
Loud and clear.
That's a yes.
Can you hear us?
Yes. How's everybody doing? Oh, wait, my camera's off. Chris, it's recording already. Did you see that?
Yes, I saw it. It was automatic.
Okay.
So it's a good looking hat, Trustee Kudo.
Yeah, the kids did an awesome job. They just wrapped up their season in Indiana.
Chris, you guys can hear me okay, right?
Yes.
Can somebody talk? Because I can't hear anybody on my end.
Hello, testing 1, 2, 3.
We can hear you,
us, Adam?
trustees.
Can you hear me?
I
Yes.
can, Jim, can you hear me?
Yes.
Because I just pushed restart, but I don't have an image. I don't have a.
Yeah, I can't hear anybody on my end.
Okay. We can.
All right. How's that?
Can you hear us?
We can hear you.
I can hear you now.
Okay, great.
Okay, we can hear you. All right. All right. Now that we can all hear each other, it's 6:30. I'd like to call to order the meeting for the today's meeting for the Public Safety Committee. We had 3 agenda items for today. I reached
Kathy, you've got to mute. Something's going on. Or somebody named Kathy needs to mute.
Looking.
Is that echo still? Is that better? Okay, all right. All right, we have 3 agenda items. Reached out to the trustees in advance. tweak the order of the agenda a bit to lead off with the item regarding proposed ordinance number 3057, then go into the communications plan, and then conclude with a discussion around the semi-report. Is there any objection to that? Okay, then we'll proceed with that. The idea being that I want to try to move through these first two items as expeditiously as possible, and then in order to devote as much time as possible to the report within the time allotted. So with that, I just want to take up item regarding proposed ordinance 3057. We received a communication from a member of the public requesting that we table that ordinance and refer the issue to the Parks and Public Spaces Committee. I just wanted to get a sense from you, Chief, Chief and Chris, whether, is there any downside to referring it to the Parks and Public Spaces Committee before we take it up?
I don't have any objections to referring it back to Parks and Public Safety. I mean, I think it would probably give us a little more clarification. It sort of came in at the last minute at a Parks and Public Spaces meeting. And I wrote the ordinance based on my understanding of that meeting in good faith, and shared my draft with the village attorney. I also shared with him the the recommendations made by Sandy Pendleton. And the village attorney didn't raise some of the similar concerns. However, given the additional communication from Sandy, I don't have any issues of referring it back to Parks and Public Spaces.
Okay. Given that, I would like to make a motion to refer proposed ordinance number 3057 to Parks and Public Spaces Committee for further discussion. Is there a second?
I'll second that. Yeah, I'll second it.
All right. Any further discussion?
There was a hand raised.
Yeah, I have my hand up. I am here as a member of the Elder Services Advisory Board, and I just wanted to note also, and it sounds like, there's no disagreement, but it's important that whatever ordinance is adopted or, canceled or whatever, however we logistically get to this point, that there needs to be an ability for people within the village to move older adults or disabled adults on bicycles and do so without, conflicting with the ordinance in place. So. Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. Matter is referred to Parks and Public Safety Committee. I'm sorry, Pedestrian Bicycle Safety. Whatever. Anyway, it's referred. Anyway, next item would be the communication plan. Chief Worth, would you like to outline the communication plan for us? And we'll take any further questions based on that. There's no action on this item, and ideally, depending on how the discussion goes, I would like to spend no more than 10 minutes on this so we can move on to the semi-annual report. So I guess just with that, Chief, please share us the plan.
Thank you, Trustee Anderfer. So the communications plan put together by the police department is really just a living document that helps guide us in ensuring that we're getting accurate, consistent and timely information out to the public, to the village stakeholders as soon as we can. It provides us with the ability to organize the information and have it come from a single source or a single point of contact whether that's myself specifically or a designee on behalf of the police department. What we want to do is eliminate any confusion and rumor so that we can control not only the communications that are happening internally, but how those communications are being presented and heard externally as well. Another reason for this communications plan is for us to maintain relationships, credible relationships with the community, the officials, and the media, and build those relationships if they don't already exist. And then ensuring that we're supporting the public after any crisis that occurs within the village. So we predominantly do that through social media, and Facebook is the most utilized social media medium that we utilize. And so we do that for public safety announcements, for our weekly reports, for newsworthy information that the public may need to know, and any other kind of sources of information to help the public be informed of what the police department is doing and any other information that may help guide them throughout the course of events that are taking place in the village. I know that the Facebook posts get shared regularly by the Shorewood Community Network, amongst others. And so it helps us to bolster the communications that we want to get out to the public. As it relates to notifications to village stakeholders, and in that group is the village president, the village manager, all the trustees, and any other stakeholder, the assistant village manager, that may be necessary to be included on newsworthy or public safety information that we need to get out there. Now, I want to preface this by saying we've had a couple of high profile incidents in Shorewood. And the fact of the matter is that the police department will never beat social media in getting news information out. It's just not possible. But what we can do, and the reason that we have this communications guide, is that we want to get information out in a timely manner, but more importantly, make sure that it's accurate. We are bound by a number of laws, rules, state statutes, open records, personnel records, bargaining, plus confidential or restricted information that can't be released based on the nature of the investigation. So juvenile information, victim before family notifications are made. So those are just a few of the things that we cannot release when a major incident happens. But what we want to do is get that information out as quickly as possible, as accurately as possible, understanding that some of our major investigations are fluid in nature. And so that it also allows us the ability to provide additional updates as necessary and keep the informational flow from, like I said, a single source of contact within the police department. Now, I said earlier that the point of contact would be myself or my designee. And one of the things that we've done is we share this information with all of our supervisors so that they can be empowered to give a statement for a non-critical incident on scene without myself or the two captains coming in. And we've provided them with a worksheet, an internal worksheet, to help guide them in those responsibilities and making sure that they're getting the information out that the public needs. A couple of other things with the communications plan is that I've noted typically how things transpire in a major incident. And so if you look at page 3 of this document, there are 10 bulleted points that we typically follow in a communications plan, starting with the crisis event or other incident occurs, to command staff response, to obtaining all the information and making sure that the scene, victims, witnesses, and everything else is secure, maintaining scene integrity, and then getting notifications out to the village president, village manager, and village trustees as soon as possible, determine what, if any, media involvement there is, release a media statement both internally and externally, and then monitor for any additional information that may need to be published. and then complete an after action report or a debrief internally if that's in fact necessary. So I would like to think that in some of the incidents that we've experienced here in Shorewood, that you as trustees have gotten information from me as quickly as I could possibly disseminate it, making sure that it's accurate and timely. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about this particular plan. And like I said, I just want to reinforce that it is a living document. Things change as we learn additional information about media releases and public information training and those types of things. Any questions?
Do the trustees have any questions for Chief Worth? Trustee Stokerbrand.
Can you hear me? 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 Can you hear me?
You got an echo, Kathy.
I have a terrible echo, right?
Yes, you do. 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 Perhaps you're able to type, yeah, can you type your question into the chat? Is that a possibility? Jim, I don't have any questions for the chief. I'm, having gone.
You cut out there.
I was giving Kathy a second to ask her question. So I once her question popped up, I stopped speaking.
Okay.
What, I'm not sure, why are assault, sexual assault, and rape included? I'm not sure that I understand your question. Why are they not included? There's no specific reason that they're not included. But those are obviously very sensitive investigations. And so given the nature of those investigations, we may or may not release information in circumstances where there's a public safety risk, especially a sexual assault, forcible sexual assault. That's information that we would get out to the public right away. So there's no reason that it's left off specifically.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Kathy? Yeah, and there is a qualifier for major incidents include but are not limited to. So we can't possibly forecast every single scenario that we're going to get information out about.
Okay. Thank you for that. Do any members of the public have any questions? Okay, seeing none, we can move on to the next agenda item, the semi-annual report.
Jim, Kathy just did say, asked another question. Finally, what is the major way to communicate with the public? And what did we say earlier? Facebook. Yes, that is the predominant way that we'll communicate with the public, especially in fluid incidents or public safety announcements, road closures, those types of things. We also do communicate through the village manager's memo and some of the other mediums within the village.
Okay, thank you. With that, do any members of the public have any questions? Okay. All right. With that, let's move on to the semi-annual report. Chris or Chief Worth, is this anything you can put on the screen?
Chief, are you queued up to have the slide deck, or I can share it in a moment if you like?
Let's see. You have it, Chris? Can you share it?
I just opened it, so I'll share my screen in just a moment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, can you all see it?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Chief, if you just want to cue me, I'll be able to do slides however at your pace.
Sure, thanks. Let's go ahead and
Oh,
move
sorry.
to,
Sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to say that you just want to make sure you're able to present the report in its entirety and ask your trustees and members of the public to hold questions until after the presentation is completed. Thank you.
thank you. Why don't we switch, let's go right down to page 3. So for the trustees participating in this meeting, much of this information that's included in the semi-annual report has already been presented at a prior public safety meeting. So I won't spend a lot of time on it unless there are specific questions at the end. I can go back over some things. But I wanted to most specifically denote that our mission statement core values are indicated on page 3. As I've had conversation with all of the department members and Trustee Arndorfer during his roll call meetings, I intend to revise our mission statement and core values. I think that we're able to communicate much of the same information in a more concise form and information that is more easily remembered and recited by the officers employed by the police department. What I learned during my check-ins with all of the officers is that many of them could tell me what some of the core values were, but they couldn't tell me what some of the definitions were included in those core values. And I want them to embody our core values. I want them to be able to know them and recite them and embody them and practice them every single day. And I think that they're doing those things, but having this built into your memory, your muscle memory in your brain, really strikes a chord with me, and it does with the officers as well. So, like I said, I think we could get the same message across in a much more concise form. So as we go through some of the year 1 accomplishments, like I said, I met with every single one of the department members, civilian staff included, at least twice. And I'm doing that on a continual basis and on a biannual basis, so twice a year, just simply to check in with them and find out how things are going, what they need, what they expect from me, what they expect from their supervisors. How can we make their job better and easier? So I've gleaned a lot of excellent information from those check-ins. Going to the next page on page 4, we've really emphasized completing some of the recommendations or considering and prioritizing some of the WISE recommendations. As of today's date, we have 2 remaining recommendations. Well, there's a recommendation in front of the village board in a little bit at 7:30. But other than that, we have 2 additional recommendations to still be continued or considered. And we're working very hard on one, and hopefully we will get it completed before the end of the year. And that's considering a strategy for using a computer inquiry to justify a traffic stop. And then the one in front of the board this afternoon or later this evening is Braille citizen complaint forms. Training, we've really placed an emphasis significantly on training. And this is going to come up as we get into the semi-annual report, but a few of the training items that we're focusing on are topics such as crisis intervention training, which is how to responsibly deal with individuals who are suffering from mental health crisis, as well as de-escalation training. And a lot of that focuses also on professional communications, is incorporated in that de-escalation training. Understanding that there may be circumstances in which force is necessary to be used, but how do we best mitigate those instances where force may be used, or how to conduct our aftercare in the event that force is in fact used. Open records training, myself and Captain Roboleski attended, as well as public information training that I attended. We hosted a crisis intervention training at the police department, and in September we'll be hosting a dynamics of officer and citizen encounters, which will be a regional event for us at the PD. And that's one of my goals when we get to the next page, is for Shorewood. We have a great community room, is for us to become a training destination, for us to host regional training, so that we can showcase who we are, what we do, and really be participative in some of the training that we want our officers to attend and that we think is beneficial for our North Shore partners and other agencies across the county and beyond. Going on to page 5. I know Captain Santiago presented to the village board his training from the Northwestern School of Stafford Command. That was a 10-week leadership development program, which was extremely beneficial. And he has implemented a number of the training topics in the police department. So those are a couple of the trainings that we're really focusing on. As well as all the unified tactics, so defense and arrest tactics, professional communications, vehicle operations, emergency vehicle, like I said, emergency vehicle operations, and so on and so forth. And then looking for opportunities for our supervisors to attend additional professional development in their role as well. Communications, at the bottom of page 5 there, I just went over our communications plan. And then on page 6, Chris, is all of the events to date that we've participated in for our community outreach, community engagement. And that is something that we still want to continue to do and look for ways to build upon what we've already done. One of the areas of focus that I also want to in our community engagement is getting more officers involved in our community events. So including some of our civilian employees and those officers that are assigned to the late shift that leave work at 7 o'clock in the morning and don't frequently have an opportunity to engage in some of these events. So really getting everybody involved. And so it's not just a select few officers that are participating in that. If you get on to the next page, page 7, we're trying hard. I know when I first started, bicycle patrol was an area of interest for village residents. And I had the date, or I had the 66.5 hours year to date is what we've ridden in 2023. And you'll see in 2021, 69.5 was all of the year. So we still have several months left of good weather, hopefully. And we'll continue to assign officers out to bicycle patrol as time and staffing allows. One of the other areas that we've improved and revised is the number of business checks that we've conducted. In 2023 alone, we've conducted 526 business checks and 239 park checks. Now, our park checks include the Ball Diamond, Atwater, and then Estabrook. So we've also revised the call codes to make sure that we're properly documenting the what the officers are doing out there. And then just our collaboration meeting with Metro Market and other business leaders to refine some of the safety protocols. Metro Market has really changed the way that they're doing things and improved the number of shoplifters that are occurring within there. We receive crime summaries from the Milwaukee Police Department that are distributed to all of our officers every single day. I meet weekly with Chief Salazar from University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and a representative from District 1 to make sure that we're sharing information about recent crime trends and other relevant information. And then I attend monthly meetings with the North Shore chiefs as well as Milwaukee County law enforcement executives. Some of the process improvements that we're continuing to work on is making sure that we're properly using our overtime budget, and then our review of our standard operating procedures is ongoing. As you know, we still have 2 vacancies. Next page, Chris. As you know, we still have 2 vacancies within the police department, and we've got an upcoming police commission meeting to interview 2 possible candidates or two applicants for that position. And until the retirements of Detective Gary Lenda and Mark Myers, we were fully staffed. Especially after we hired Captain Robleski, Officer Mouch, and promoted Sergeant Smith. My year to 1 to 3 goals will also mirror the 2024 work plans, which you'll see in the upcoming months. And then if there's no questions on that data, I'll move right into the remainder of the semi-annual report.
Thanks. Trustees, any questions on this opening segment? Trustee Stokerbrand?
I'm not quite sure if this is the place to pose this question, but I'm really curious to see with this public safety. I believe it was the state legislature said every county will have one main dispatch location, and Bayside Communications got the Milwaukee County designation. And because that's such an integral part of our, literally minute by minute operation, I'm wondering, as a local municipality elected official, and you as a police administrator, what does that mean for us going forward? Because that's such a critical piece. Our dispatch is such a critical piece for our officers on every shift. And now there's this new responsibility. I'm wondering about transparency, what's going to be going. So my understanding is the Bayside Dispatch Center is going to be, help me out here, if you understand what this means going forward, and when will we actually see it? I guess that's the biggest question, is when will we see this take effect, and how do you see that it might affect our local operation, and what should we be watching for?
Sure. Honestly, Kathy, I don't know a whole lot about the PSAP grant that was awarded to the Bayside Communications. And I don't know, it is a communications grant. I don't foresee Milwaukee not having their own communications. So I'll dig into it a little bit more and see if I can't answer those questions for you. The designation about the PSAP grant just came out, I believe, a week ago. So I haven't done enough research into what that means for us.
I would assume we have a lot of time, but if there's anything that we can help you with as this moves forward to, just maintain what we have for our officers. And I would hate to see a reduction in services at all because of this larger responsibility for that dispatch center, which is so key to our operations. Thank you.
You're welcome.
President McCaig?
Yes, thank you. I was just going to say I forgot to list it under my village president report, but I can report on the PSAP designation at that time.
Excellent. All right. Okay, Chief, please proceed.
Thank you, President McKeag. All right, as we get into the next slide, from the period of January to June 2023, the police department responded to just over 5,400 calls, issued over 8,500 parking citations and 111 non-traffic related citations, which are designated specifically in that chart. You might notice, and this was brought up during the shift change meetings, that Bayside Communications has over 8,200 calls for service, which might seem a bit odd. And it's really, it's how the calls come in that Bayside gets, I don't want to say credit for those calls, but it's really just a reporting anomaly. And it really has nothing to do with the fact that Bayside is taking 3,000 more calls than us. But next slide, as we talk about calls for service, you can see the graph there that we are up in calls for service with over 1,100 calls. And that number continues to climb, especially from 2021 and 22 numbers. Next slide. Our municipal ordinances and traffic citations year to date are also climbing, although there was a slight dip from May to June, which we can attribute to the start of vacation season. But we expect those numbers to either rise or flatten out as we enter into the last 6 months of the year. Next slide. We'll talk specifically about our crime data. And year to date, there's 17 total Part 1 crimes. Now, Part 1 crimes are defined by the FBI as those 8 specific crime types. And you'll see theft is really driving our numbers. And theft can encompass everything from retail theft to theft of a bicycle to mail theft, and so on and so forth. So that is the predominant crime category in Shorewood. And you'll see that our motor vehicle theft numbers have dropped from May to June. And overall, we're doing fairly well, given some of the rate of motor vehicle thefts throughout the rest of the county. Next slide. And that's just another chart that shows where we're at in crime in crime comparison by year. So you'll see from 2020 to 2021 to 2022, we're doing very well, and we're down in almost every category with the exception of burglary, which we're at a fairly straight rate for.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, Chief, is that 2021, 2022, and 2023?
2023 year to date, correct?
Okay, got it. Thank you. And those prior years are full years, correct?
Those prior years are full years, correct? So next slide. So this just specifically delineates where we're spending our time on parking violations. The majority of those being night parking, followed closely by posted time limits, parking on odd and even sides of the street, and then prohibited where by official sign. So we look to be doing really good with our parking citation issuance, and I suspect that we'll surpass last year's numbers as we continue to enforce some of the parking issues that exist in the village. Next slide. So use of forces, you'll see that it appears as though we're up for 2023 compared to our prior years. Trustee Arndorfer sent an email late yesterday afternoon. And in that, he expressed a number of concerns about a number of topics, including uses of force. So as we did an analysis in our use of force, one of the things that we found with our uses of force is that of those 14 incidents of uses of force, 8 of them are pointing and aiming, which we believe were underreported in prior years. Now, pointing and aiming in our case for reporting purposes is an officer encounters an individual who they know or believe to be armed, and they withdraw their firearm to gain compliance from that individual. Like I said, 8 of those 14 use of force incidents are solely pointing and aiming. That's also high-risk vehicle stops, where we've had incidents where we encountered an armed robbery suspect who was armed with a firearm. Those are our stolen vehicles, our fleeing incidents within the village. So those instances that have the propensity to end in violence, or individuals who may be armed given the circumstances of their flight or possession of a stolen vehicle. So like I said, we point our firearms, providing them orders to gain their compliance without hopefully having to use any additional physical force. Some demographics of our use of force is that 3 of the 14 incidents are Shorewood residents. 2 of them are white males, 1 is a black male. 8 of the 14, like I said, 8 of the 14 incidents involve pointing and aiming and high-risk vehicle stops. 7 of the 14 incidents, or 50%, involve black male non-residents. 71%, 5 of those 7 involve pointing and aiming. 1 of 14 involve the black male residents at 7%. 2 incidents involve white male residents at 21%. 3 involve black female non-residents for 21%. Now, a couple of things that I'd like to specifically note as it relates to uses of force is that based on the Weiss recommendation, where the recommendation was made and implemented in the Shorewood Police Department, supervisors respond to every single use of force. And after my appointment, we're holding officers and supervisors accountable for proper reporting and proper documentation of uses of force, however seemingly small or significant the use of force report is. We're in compliance with our policy for use of force reporting. Also, I review every single use of force report that gets filed, and that includes the reports filed by the officers, body worn and squad videos. And I think lastly, important to note is that we have 0 complaints for 2023 for any reason, but especially for uses of force. Next slide. And this just shows a breakdown by month, just in a simple chart of our uses of force. And it also breaks down the percentage of our call volume, total calls for service against the use of force incidents, so that 0.26% of our uses of our calls for service result in a use of force. Next slide. The last thing that I apologize, I also wanted to mention, and I know I mentioned this in the opening, is our emphasis on training. So crisis intervention training, fair and impartial policing training, de-escalation training. So we're really placing an emphasis on that training, professional communications. And the uses of force go through several layers. So a report is filed by the officers, sergeant subsequently files a report. It's then reviewed by Captain Robleski or Captain Santiago before it even makes my desk. And we have conversations based on the uses of force and whether or not there are training opportunities that exist on a case-by-case basis based on the circumstances that we've reviewed. And in this case, only one of the 14 possessed a training opportunity, and that was for professional communications. In this, how we simply talk to the person in advance of the force itself. Next slide. And again, I just wanted to highlight the fact that we have received 0 complaints for any reason in the police department in 2023. Next slide. Our traffic stop data. This slide is not accurate, and Captain Santiago revised this slide. Trustee Arndorfer, you have the correct information in the presentation or the data we compiled for you based on your inquiry. So the total traffic stop data is 6 for American Indian, 51 for Asian, 562 for Black or African American, 496 for white, 60 for Hispanic and Latino, for a total traffic stop of 1175. So one of the things that Trustee Arndorfer asked was the nature of the stops, whether or not we could specifically delineate the reasons for the stop, speeding, ignoring traffic signs, and we can, maybe, I guess I'll qualify that. Right now, there isn't a query that is specifically built for us to identify that. So all of our traffic stops would have to be hand counted for the reason of the stop. So it is noted on our weekly reports when the officer enters in the information for their traffic stop. So that's how we would have to go through every single traffic stop or and validate weekly calls for service to make sure that we're properly capturing that information. Next slide. Again, you'll see a dip between May and June of traffic stops. Do we know where these drivers were from? Again, we don't have that information without conducting a hand count of all the specific traffic stops because there isn't a query built for that. So we do capture race data, but not address data unless there's a citation issued. And Fernando could probably speak a little bit more to that specifically because he captured all of the data that we have and that we've provided.
Yeah, and even with the information that we have, it would be pretty difficult and time consuming to find out if they're arrested or not, because unless they're arrested, the report that we get from traffic stop data does not list an address or residency for the individual. So we would have to either create a new report or, again, if it's just traffic stop, because we're not going to have the information if, for example, the owner of the car is not the person that got the citation. So we're not going to know what their address is necessarily. So, I mean, it could be done, but it will take quite a bit of time.
So another question that Trustee Arndorfer asked in his email is that he was hoping the department could provide perspective on what guidance, if any, is provided to officers. What should they be looking for in making a traffic stop? And if any causes are prioritized. And in this case, the guidance that we provide the officers is to make sure that they're making lawful traffic stops with reasonable suspicion. Unless an officer is working a grant specifically related to OWI, speeding, seatbelt, and even in those grants, they have the authority and autonomy to conduct traffic stops for other matters related to traffic violations, with the focus being that specifically to the grant. But I'd like to read in part an email that I've sent, and what I continue to emphasize with our officers is that traffic stops are continue to be an important topic for the village and its residents. And we can combat the perceptions of bias-based policing by continuing to perform our roles equitably and professionally. The intent of our traffic stop should be, among other things, to provide safety and our motoring and pedestrian public, to prevent and or detect crime, provide presence in an area and in response to resident complaints about speed, reckless driving, failure to yield to signs or lights, and to modify driving behaviors and enforcing participating in our grant activity. We're supported by Wisconsin state law for enforcing violations, and traffic stops are conducted with reasonable suspicion. My expectation is our officers will continue to provide the attention needed on Shorewood roadways while making lawful stops without bias, using discretion for enforcement, and acting with professionalism. I expect our officers to be engaged, and I will fully support your efforts when our actions adhere to policy. Our policy is traffic enforcement aims to reduce traffic crashes and improve the safety and quality of life for the community through traffic law compliance. This may be achieved by applying such techniques as geographic, temporal assignment and of personnel and equipment, and establishing preventative patrols. Factors such as the violator's socioeconomic status, political office or affiliation, race, sex, age, or any racial bias-based profiling element are inappropriate to consider when making violation enforcement decisions. As I indicated, our officers are conducting lawful stops based on reasonable suspicion, which is the lawful requirement for them to conduct the stop. An additional inquiry made by Trustee Arndorfer was whether or not, as a matter of practice, officers proactively are running plates prior to a stop to determine if a vehicle has outstanding warrants associated with it. When officers run plates, if there is a misdemeanor or felony warrant for the registered owner, it comes across as an alert to the officer indicating that that is the case. The registered owner has a misdemeanor or felony warrant for them. Shorewood, the village of Shorewood does not issue municipal warrants, and we do not receive any municipal warrants from the city of Milwaukee that may exist. So all of the alerts that come across for warrants are for municipal or felony violations, and we consider those to be non-discretionary for arrest. The officers use computer inquiries to verify the registration status of a vehicle or to conduct a criminal check of a vehicle. And is it wanted for a criminal offense or is it stolen? That's the predominant reason our officers conduct computer inquiries or registration checks. So another inquiry by Trustee Arndorfer was the demographics of a stop. So as I indicated earlier, we have the accurate data. Trustee Arndorfer has that data. 603 traffic stops were conducted of African-American Black drivers and 504 traffic stops for white drivers. Determining race prior to a stop is often difficult, and using race as a factor for a stop is prohibited, as I indicated. Based on data compiled during the Weiss study, approximately 20,000 vehicles travel through the village of Shorewood on a daily basis. So that means that in a 6-month period, 3.65 million cars travel through the village of Shorewood. And in a 6-month period, there have been a total of 1165 traffic stops. 0.03% of the vehicles stopped in this 6-month period. And 0.014% of those drivers were white, and 0.016% of those drivers were African-American or Black. There has not been, as we indicated earlier, there has not been a means to discern the demographic makeup of those 3.6 or over 7 million cars that travel through the village of Shorewood in a 6-month or yearly basis. And as Shorewood is roughly around 13,000 residents, not all of them, as we know, own vehicles or operate vehicles, choosing other means of transportation. So if you want to go down to the next slides, so summary arrests, physical custody. As I indicated, the common charges by race is broken down, carrying concealed weapon and drug possession are our two highest arrest factors. So that means illegally carrying a firearm and possessing illegal narcotics in that. And then the summary arrest physical custody demographics are broken down there, as are the warrants. And as I indicated, warrants are a non-discretionary arrest. So, and then if you go to the next slide, it's just simply a pie chart that delineates that same information. So we've got about 8 minutes left, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Jim, I see your
Jim,
lips
you're
moving,
muted.
but I can't hear you.
Thank you. Just wanted to say thanks to you and the department for pulling together this information. I think it's a very useful overview of the police activity for the first 6 months and easily digestible. Also want to thank you for your quick response to some of the questions I had, and given you addressed those, I just wanted to open it first up to other trustees to see if they had any other questions. Trustee Stokerbrand.
I had a question about, I'm just trying to get some educational information for myself. So the warrants are issued by other municipalities or legal entities, right? Because our village doesn't, but you're obligated to arrest them by state law. Is that correct?
That's correct. So mostly the warrants are issued by, so all of our misdemeanor and felony cases are reviewed by the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office. So it may be a warrant on a case that has been reviewed and the defendant or the individual involved, suspect, failed to appear, or it may be working its way through the court system and there's some other matter that the named defendant needs to take care of, whether that's bail jumping or, like I said, failure to appear or some other matter. So it could be a fresh investigation warrant where the suspect is being sought based on, and a warrant is issued based on probable cause, or the defendant has already entered the criminal justice system and a warrant is issued based on the court proceedings. And the answer is,
Oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
What's an example of a misdemeanor warrant, just for my information?
Motor vehicle theft could be a misdemeanor warrant.
Motor vehicle theft is a misdemeanor warrant?
I believe so.
For suspicion of, maybe, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Some domestic violence
I mean,
incidents.
I was thinking fail to appear sounds like a misdemeanor to me.
Well, failure to appear could be a misdemeanor or a felony based on the original nature of the offense.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
Trustee Kudo.
This was incredibly thorough. I don't have any questions.
Do any members of the public have any questions, or would any members of the public like to make any comments at this time? Okay, seeing none, I just want, once again, just wanted to thank Chief Worth and the department for all the work that they put into this report. I think it's a useful tool. So with that,
Trustee Arndorfer, just one thing. We will get the semi-annual report published on our website as soon as we get that data corrected. It will be published.
Excellent, thank you. All right, with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 All right, meeting of the Public Safety Committee comes to a close at 7:26. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.